Associations. I'm Ed Horowitz, your host today. Our topic is community journalism, and I'm with Rhonda Crowder and Tyisha Blade. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So community journalism, I think, is super important to talk about stories that aren't always well represented on either, the typical news channel or a typical news site. What do you think is the value for readers and viewers digitally anywhere to get those stories of the community that aren't always accessible for others?
I think that it provides a much broader perspective, and you get really authentic stories at the community level, particularly from ethnic and community newspapers, neighborhood newspapers. And one of the biggest challenges with mainstream media today is the lack of trust and disinformation. So lots of times residents, people in the neighborhood, they turn to their community media outlets because they know that someone is writing those stories that they can trust.
Right, I agree with you. Trust is important, and most people do get local news. They're more trusting of that than they are of national news. So, Tyisha, you're involved with that as well. Is trust the big issue for you? You think that makes a big difference?
Yeah, and writing the magazine, people at first they were like, no, we don't want to do this. You're part of the media. But then once I started doing the magazine, they were like, okay, we see what this is about, and they trust you to tell their stories, and it's honest. So. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that people want to read that. They want honesty. They want to be trusting. The people who are telling their stories are representing them or coming from their community. That can make a big difference as well, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So you're involved in the president of the local chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. Can you tell me about your chapter and about the organization in general? So
we are a professional association, and our members represent print, radio, TV, and digital. We've been reinstituted as a chapter since 2013. And as president, my role is to basically guide the organization forward, fulfill the mission and the vision of the organization.
Right. And Tyisha, you're involved with NABJ as well, right?
Yes, I'm involved with the local chapter, and we also have the student chapter that we just started. It started in October, and we're looking to get national recognition once we turn our application in March.
And the student chapter is at Cleveland State University?
Yes.
Okay, and full disclosure, I'm a faculty advisor for the student chapter, so, and I think it's valuable to have that. We'll come back to that in a minute. I want to talk more about the National Association of Black Journalists. It's their 50th anniversary.
Yes.
And they're going to be having their national convention here in Cleveland over the summer, right?
Absolutely. So the convention is scheduled for August 6th through the 10th. Here in Cleveland. We're really excited about it. The community is excited about having upwards of 4,500 journalists in the community. And it is the 50th anniversary of NABJ.
Right, and now some of the viewers may remember last summer NABJ was in the news itself because President Trump showed up there and had a big interview. This was prior to the election. Are you expecting anything to be happening this coming summer? Is President Trump going to make a return visit?
I doubt it, since it's not a campaign year. I think it might be a little less dramatic in that sense, but a great time because it is the 50th anniversary of NABJ.
Right. And I think these type of associations are always valuable, when colleagues from all around the country can get together and not just socialize, but learn from each other, and professional connections are always very important, right?
Absolutely. It's a wonderful conference. The connections, as you mentioned, the fellowship, the information that you receive, professional development is invaluable. It's just really to come together and have a good time.
Right. Now, Tyisha, we have not had a student chapter of NABJ before, prior to this. What made you decide that you wanted to start this and connect the students with this organization?
I really just thought that it was a valuable way for the undergraduate students to get networking experience. So I'm like, well, we have this convention coming. We should have a student chapter, and let's just start it. So I got some interested people. Derek's the president now, and then we have Tammy, who is the vice president, and they just wanted to do it. They were eager about it, so I was like, let's do it.
Right, so opportunities for networking and hopefully participating in the summer convention as well, learning more things. I think that's always important for young journalists. And that. So, Tyisha, let's talk more about your magazine. So you're the publisher and editor of the East Clevelander. Why don't you
Yes.
tell our viewers a little bit more about the magazine?
So the magazine is my child that I started in 2020 after I graduated. It's closely modeled after the Cleveland State Vindicator, where I was the editor-in-chief there. Excuse me. And then I just wanted to do it for real after I graduated. So I started interviewing. It was COVID, so it was hard, but I just sat at home and interviewed people via Zoom, and it became a thing. So I went into broadcast after that shortly. So it was kind of hard to be a new producer and run a magazine. So I put the project on pause, and then once I stopped producing, I was like, okay, it's time to pick that back up. So I've done that, and we got established in 2023. That's when the first issue came out. We got our Ohio, what is it called?
You had a grant?
No, not the grant. Oh, sorry, I'm blanking right now.
Okay. So you're publishing, how many issues do you publish a year now?
So we publish 3 a year.
Okay. And when will the next issue be out for?
The next issue comes out in May.
Okay. So, and about how many issues are come out for each time it's printed?
So we get 2,500, and we print locally at Footprinting.
Okay, which is always great. So, and what's the reaction from people in East Cleveland seeing a magazine? I mean, certainly, I think, as we were just saying a minute ago, when East Cleveland is covered in the news, be it Cleveland.com or elsewhere in the community, it's always with some problems, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to lift up the community, right, with this magazine?
Of course, lift up the morale. Seeing yourself in media is important, but the way you see yourself is also important, and I think it's even more important. We don't want to see ourselves like, being beat up or, just the negativity of it. So the positivity that comes out of the magazine, people really love it. They ask when it's coming out. They email me all the time. I'm always getting text messages like, hey, what are we doing? How can we help? Things like that. So it's really gotten some good feedback.
And now, I know in your most recent issue was really meaningful to me. I'm a big fan of Wayne Dawson from Fox 8 News, and he was on the cover. Do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about that story, because it was very emotional for me to read.
Yeah, that was a really heartfelt story. And even during the interview, like Wayne and his brother William, we were all on Zoom, and we were all just getting so emotional. Just talking about coming from East Cleveland and how successful they are right now, and then Wayne's journey with cancer. It was a lot, but it also showed people that people can come from East Cleveland and do great things. So
right. So I
yeah.
think having, I think that's always important for that. You have to see yourself, to be yourself, and have those models of there, right? You can start from one point and end up in a very different point. So I think that's great that you're covering those kind of pieces. So you had experience when you were a student being editor-in-chief of the Vindicator, Cleveland State University student magazine. And Rhonda, you were also involved in Cleveland State University. You're also an alum of Cleveland State. You were involved with the Cauldron, the student newspaper.
Yes.
So that gave you a lot of experience when you started out too, right?
That gave me a whole lot of experience, and I always say that was when I first got bit by the journalism bug, because I was not interested in journalism at all. I was an English major, and my specialization was in creative writing, publishing,
so that's very
and
different
editing.
than news.
It's very different than news. I never took a journalism class or anything like that, because I was very tunnel vision that I wanted to write books, plays, and movies. No interest in journalism until I found myself as the arts and entertainment editor for the Cauldron.
So you had some experience there, and then after you graduated from Cleveland State, you ended up at one of the most iconic African American newspapers in the country, the Call and Post here in Cleveland, and you worked there for quite a while, right?
I worked there for 11 years as a general assignment reporter.
Right, and also that gave you a lot of training. And so in terms of when we're talking here about community journalism, right, you're in the community, you're telling stories. Did you feel like you had a similar perspective as Tyisha's saying, as what she wants to do as she's covering East Cleveland?
Absolutely. One of the beautiful things about the Call and Post, particularly when I arrived there, was that it was already a very well established media outlet. So there was never a day where the phone didn't ring, where emails didn't come in, where people always had stories to tell. And I found myself oftentimes being the first person to write about somebody and some of the things that they were doing, or the only person in the city who would be willing to listen to this person and tell their story.
And So I know you were involved in some of your reporting that led to the establishment of the BRIC program. Do you want to
Yes.
tell the viewers a little bit what the BRIC program and how some of the coverage that you did when you were at the Call and Post helped to lead to this?
So the BRIC program, and I'm not sure if it's still going now, it was a program that helped young men. It was led by a man by the name of Tim Roberts, who was a faculty member at Martin Luther King Law and Public School in Cleveland Public School District. And I wrote a story about his program and the successes that he was having with getting young men through high school and into college. And I wrote the story one day, and you write the story, you don't think anything else about it, you're off to the next story. But I get a call, and the call was from the wife of Judge Mattia. And she asked me, she said, hey, you wrote this story about this program. I think it's a wonderful program, and I would love to get in contact with the organizer, because I think that, me and some of my friends could probably provide care packages and things like that for these young men while they're in college. And that led to the establishment of the Friends of BRIC. And so that was, I think, the first time where I really understood the impact of the stories that I was writing.
Right. So you're by reporting on these things, it's inspiring other people to take action. I mean, this is what journalists. This is why you're in the business, right? You
Absolutely.
Want impacting the community.
Yes.
Same for you, Tyisha? You feel like, did you have a moment where, it's Wayne Dawson's story and his brother, certainly that's very emotional. Do you feel like you're being able to make a positive impact, for something specific in East Cleveland with your stories, or a story that maybe you covered when you were at Channel 19 as a producer?
Most definitely. And I really think that the stories in the community need to be told from the community members. I mean, it's just important. And it has to be in a way that they love the magazine, and the outside community loves it too.
Right. So telling those kind of stories, and I think we know certainly that people might not watch TV news, they might watch locals, but it's those newspapers, magazines, digital products that come from the community. Those are telling their own stories, mm-hmm. and I think people crave those, right? They want to see those stories represented, and I think and honestly, there's money to be made, right? This is very entrepreneurial for you, right? I think students, with the changing media landscape, Tyisha, how do we teach our students, to get the bug like you, for it to be entrepreneurial, like start their own magazine, start their own website? What do you think we need to do here?
You got to have a team of go-getters. They have to want it, because it's a lot of work. I was spoiled at Cleveland State. I had a staff. Everybody was on scholarship.
When you were editor of the
when I was editor in
magazine.
chief,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So then when I actually had to go out there and do it, I'm like, okay, all this is my job. I have to go get the ads, have to lay the magazine out. So you just really have to instill that in them. Like, you have to be ready to do a lot of things,
mm-hmm.
like wear a lot of hats. So
right.
It's not just writing, it's not just layout, it's not just getting ads. If you're going to start it from scratch, you have to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. I think right, and same for you, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
having a, so you left the Call and Post. Now you have your own company, and you do a lot of different media, different promotional things. I know you've been involved with the Huff Reads marketing campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of the different projects you choose and decide to work with at your company?
Well, for me, I always consider myself a writer. I struggle with calling myself a journalist, but I'm very comfortable referring to myself as a writer, and I've always been willing to write across genres and learn, different ways and understanding different types of writing. So through my business, we do some creative writing, but we also do a lot of marketing communications writing, press releases, copywriting for websites and promotional materials and things like that. I got involved with the Huff Reads program just because of my passion for improving literacy. And, there was a literacy movement that was beginning to move through the city through the Little Free Library Neighborhood mm-hmm. initiative. And for me, I grew up in Huff. So that was, between growing up in Huff and having a love for reading and books myself, that made it easy for me to do that, to take on that project. And we really just applied what we knew best, was, promoting something. And so for that, literacy, promoting a love for reading and literacy was just, how we approached it. And it was interesting because a lot of people thought we were tutors. And I would have to tell them, no, we're not tutors. we just promote literacy. And it was a really great time to do that work in that community.
Right, and did they show some impacts from that, from more students wanting to read?
Absolutely, students and adults. One of the biggest things that I realized while doing the work was the amount of adults who, are low literate. People would always come up to me and, express the fact that they can't read and, was seeking some help. Or whenever we would set up somewhere to give away free books, we rarely took any books back home. Every book that we put out on the table, people took, whether it was an adult book or children's book. So it told me that people do have interest in reading in books if they are available and if it's something of interest to them.
That sounds great. Tyisha, what kind of things are you thinking about going ahead for the East Clevelander magazine? What kind of stories are you working on in the future, and where do you sort of see the magazine heading in the future?
I want to grow our audience. I'm trying to do more digital, more online stuff, more online content. We'll definitely keep the print because we have a lot of senior citizens in our community that can't get around. So giving them, the magazine in their hand is like a gift. They really love it. So I'll keep doing that, but I definitely want to get more on the digital side.
Right. Are you thinking of getting involved with East Cleveland in other ways besides the magazine, or?
Well, I'm on the library's trustee board. And that's enough for me with grad school for now.
Right. So you're a graduate student at Cleveland State as well. So yeah, you have a lot of things you're juggling at the moment.
Yeah.
For sure. So
it's good busy, so I like it. I love the work. So
it's good busy. So both of you are involved. I know, Rhonda, particularly, you're involved with the Who's Who in Black Cleveland. That's a book that comes out about every year or so.
Every year, yes.
Every year. And I know there's versions of it around the country. Tell me the importance of that to you, working on that.
That book is definitely about representation. Our mission is threefold: to serve to document the successes of African Americans, to serve as a networking resource, and to be inspiration to young people, which that third part of it is the part that's really most near and dear to me. We have a motto that they will be what they can see. And so there's so many times when we introduce the book to students and they say things like, I didn't know that there was this many successful people, Black people, in the city of Cleveland.
Sure.
So it gives hope for the next generation.
Right. And Tyisha, you've been involved. Do you write some of the profiles for it as well?
I did. I got a chance to write 3 profiles, 2 judges and a lawyer, and I was also an emerging leader of Who's Who in Black Cleveland 2024.
Okay, because you published East Clevelander magazine.
There it is.
So there it is. Right. And how can, if viewers who are watching this and they're like, oh, I'd be curious to get my hands on a copy of that, where can they get that?
They can go to who'swhoinblack.com.
Okay, and is it available at local libraries as well?
It's not available at local library. Well, it may be in the collection.
Okay.
It may be because the library do get a couple of copies of it every year, but I'm not sure exactly where they catalog it.
Okay, so you might need to check. You might need to check with your local librarian to fill that. Okay, and so now that we're in kind of a media business is very competitive. We have these entrepreneurial things. Both of you very involved. You write and you do your company. You do journalism for other outlets as well. So if there are young men and women who are thinking about I want to go into journalism, but I'm not exactly sure how to do it. Obviously, I'm thinking you were going to tell them to get involved with the NABJ group. Those are certainly things. Right? But what other advice, and sort of how do you see things going in the future? What if students are interested in doing it? If young people are interested in it, even less young people, they're like, I'd like to get involved or start a magazine for my community. What would you recommend, Tyisha, for people to do?
I would definitely say attend events, go networking, go where the people are, go where they're gathering at. And you might not start writing a story, but you'll get in that environment to get some creativity going.
Okay. So, and what kind of events would you recommend them going to?
Local journalist events, there's writers events, schools have events, community events as well.
Right. So networking, meeting people, talking to people. What would you recommend, Rhonda?
My advice to young people who are seriously interested in journalism is to pair it with another discipline, whether it's tech or, whether it may, even if it's law or psychology or, accounting. Don't just think about just being a journalist. To have some niche, right, or some other skill that can complement the journalism.
Right. Be it graphic design or
Absolutely.
or have
Photographer in journalism,
Right.
A designer in journalism. It's long gone are the days where you can go into a media outlet and just write or just take pictures or just do the design work. You kind of have to have that multi-skill.
Right. And do you see, going forward, do you see more opportunities for young, for African American journalists or African American writers in publishing today, or just go digitally, or where do you think that what kind of barriers do you think that are still in the way to being successful? Well, Tyisha, what do you think?
I think just, I think the discrimination hurts us, and it keeps us from actually telling our stories the right way. So once you fight past that barrier, that helps out a lot.
Right. And I know, Rhonda, on your LinkedIn page, you have a big banner that says "Amplify Black Voices," and I think that's so important. Every marginalized community, every community that's not part of needs to have their voices told. Right. So can you talk a little bit about why that's important to you? Why that banner's there?
Because diversity in voice is important, right? It's important for us to hear so many different perspectives and understand that as people we're much more alike than we are different.
Right.
And a lot of, I believe, the discrimination and racism that happens in our country is because that there have been limited stories being told or very narrow views of particular ethnic groups, and so people just don't know.
Okay, yeah, and I think those, they need to hear these voices. They need to hear the stories that both of you are reporting on and publishing and doing, and I think that's just so important to amplify those voices. So I want to thank both of you for being with us here today in Cleveland Conversations. It's been a real pleasure talking to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
And that's it for Cleveland Conversations today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.